Over 4 seasons, Knight Rider defined the 1980s action-adventure series, a handsome star besting crooks with a little help from his high-tech supercar. It was barely off the air before it was brought back for these 2 very different attempts to jump-start the franchise.
All you have to do is close your eyes, jack in, and you'll be in the computer-generated world of cyberspace.
Knight Rider 2000 and Knight Rider 2010. Knight Rider ended in 1986, not because of low ratings, but because Universal Studios accountants worked out that they couldn't squeeze enough money out of a syndication deal as they would have liked. In 1991, NBC broadcast a made-for-TV movie, Knight Rider 2000, where we would see the gang get back together, sort of but not really, in the hopes of launching a new cast in a new series. In the year 2000, Natch, in an unnamed city...
We're not any of those cities.
Handguns have been banned and criminals sentenced to suspended animation, which seems kind of less like a serious punishment and more of a timeout. I mean, by that logic, if you're absolutely busting to see where George R.R. Martin is going with A Song of Ice and Fire and can't wait 400 years, you might as well stick up a liquor store and skip the wait. A group of gun runners led by the paroled criminal Watts are trafficking in banned weapons, while the cops make do with ultrasonic stun guns. Police officer Shawn McCormick is shot point blank in the head by Watts, yet somehow survives. He's not a very good shot. There's a way to save her life, but the police commissioner nixes the idea for budgetary reasons. The hospital surgeon decides that, as he has a few hours left before fantasy football, he will just perform the life-saving partial transplant anyway.
Have you ever performed one of these before?
No, but I've logged 90 hours on the surgical simulator.
Yeah, if it were me, I'd get a second opinion. Meanwhile, Devon Miles and his new offsider at the Knight Foundation, Russell Maddock, are trying to close a deal with city officials over their Knight 4000 vehicle. With only 30 days to deliver their prototype, Devon turns to an old friend. Michael Knight is off living a tranquil life of bass fishing, which I suppose is okay, so long as you're not the bass.
One man can make a difference.
But that man's not me anymore.
Michael reluctantly agrees to come back temporarily to help finish the Knight 4000, only to find Maddock has scrapped his beloved Knight 2000 car as well as KITT and sold off a lot of the bits on Craigslist. Rather than drive around and look for houses with bits of Firebird Trans Am scattered on the front lawn, electronics genius Michael takes whatever leftover bits remain and manages to cobble together a version of KITT and installs it in his '57 Chevy.
You've obviously gone down the toilet since we split up, Michael. Get a life.
Thanks to her surgery, Shawn makes a miraculous recovery, though she's had some memory loss. She resigns from the police force and applies for a job at the Knight Foundation.
I was shot point blank in the head, and I want to nail the bastard who did it.
Where it's soon apparent that her transplant surgery involves, now let me get this straight, a recycled chip from KITT that had been sold off by Maddock, bought by the hospital, implanted in her head, so now she's got part of KITT's prissy personality, which is more personality than Shawn had previously displayed. As the film progresses, we learn that almost every single character aside from Maddock is in on Watts' gun-running conspiracy. Most of the cops, the surgeon who saved Shawn's life, and the mayor. That really only leaves Maddock and the police commissioner, despite both of them at times made to look like they actually could be villains themselves.
Michael, kindly tell this obnoxious person to remove her hands from my wheel.
The car talks.
Michael and Shawn work together, but after being chased by the villains, KITT sacrifices himself to save the pair.
Michael, take care of yourself.
Devon is kidnapped and just ups and dies. Michael, having lost his 2 best friends, gives up and heads off home to get drunk on his kitchen floor. Of course, that doesn't last, and pretty soon Michael has rebuilt KITT again and placed him into the newly completed Knight 4000, which has a fancy virtual reality mode that seems to consist purely of the same solarization effect that you had built into a cheap camcorder in the 1990s. Other than that, it's just a weird-looking red car. After a shootout in a mall, Michael talks Shawn out of killing Watts, telling her how much she will regret it if she kills Watts. And then Michael shoots Watts with a Nerf gun and he falls to his death. Huh? Michael's done with crime fighting, but a reborn KITT is ready to work with Shawn and Maddock on any new adventures that would... No, I know, that was it, one and done. The script is quite ordinary, with very little sparkle and none of the goofy, easygoing charm of the series.
I love all you guys.
The plot is really all over the place, like what a motel owner would say after running a black light over their rooms the day after senior prom.
I don't enjoy being tense.
Certain story elements seem about as likely as me getting a bank loan to start a food truck business that only sells sauerkraut subs. Though thinking about it now, I really do think Das Baguette would work. David Hasselhoff was at the time working on the relaunched syndicated version of Baywatch, so he was not going to be available for any new Knight Rider series. He suggested a series of TV movies, but in the end only one was ordered, which attracted good ratings. Even so, NBC didn't order more movies, which left Universal scratching for ways to make it work for them from a cost standpoint. But if it rated well, why only one movie?
Kid, say hello to Shawn McCormick. She has your missing chip implanted in her brain.
NBC's internal testing showed that while they liked seeing more Knight Rider, Susan Norman as Shawn McCormick was not well liked, and so a new series starring her was seen as something that, like John Madden, wouldn't fly. Susan Norman has zero personality before she's shot, and then she acts like she's the progeny of a Vulcan and an Encarta 95 CD-ROM before toning that down in the last act. David Hasselhoff and Edward Mulhare slip into their old characters as easily as someone would slip into a pair of comfy shoes. And then Devon slips into a coma and dies with all the drama of an unboxing video.
Gonna talk about that ass you hired?
I did what I had to survive.
William Daniels returns as the voice of KITT, snarkier than usual, more like himself from the first season of Knight Rider rather than the slightly more mellow AI he would develop into.
It's a new body. Take a little getting used to, but you'll do just fine.
It's your body I'm having trouble adjusting to. You did shower today, didn't you?
Yes, I had a full wash and a wax, all right?
Maddock is a hard-ass who's initially set up as an all-too-obvious antagonist, but by the end would clearly have taken Devon's role in any continuing series. As a pilot for a Shawn McCormick Knight Rider series, it's not really clear what that would look like, as the largest part of the action here revolves around Michael and Shawn working together. It's less Knight Rider, more Hard Hassel and McCormick.
Oh no, his hard drive has crashed.
No way! A hard drive malfunction is impossible with my circuitry!
There's no mention of any of the other regulars from the Knight Rider series, and Michael is now able to rebuild KITT twice without once burning himself on the soldering iron. The Knight 4000 was heavily inspired by the look of Pontiac's Banshee 4 concept car from the late 80s, but the actual vehicle used here was a Mitsubishi 3000 GT, also sold as a Dodge Stealth, with a custom body. Either way, I'm not a fan of its look. Also, for a telemovie trying to relaunch Knight Rider, the car action is utterly lacking. We get a few chase scenes with Michael's old Chevy, one scene of the Knight 4000 doubling as a boat, and a few scant handbrake turns. But there's nothing close to Super Pursuit mode or even Commodore Garden Turbo Boost. The direction and acting is done well enough, but the script, while not being terrible, is certainly not great and has none of the cheesy charm of the Knight Rider series.
Now stun him.
There is very little humour apart from this one brilliant scene where KITT thinks he stunned one of the villains.
Phasers on stun, Captain.
Don't tell me you're a closet Trekkie.
I don't think I can hold them, Mr. Spock.
While KITT can still do things like remotely influence circuits or stun people, he doesn't do much of what we would normally associate with Knight Rider. As a way of ending the story for Devon, it's deeply unsatisfying, though Michael sort of gets a half-decent send-off. And that was it, no Susan Norman series.
I understand you ordered the plug pulled on me.
But a few years later, in 1994, Knight Rider 2010 appeared.
I love this stuff.
It's a fair way into the future. Jake McQueen is a smuggler who gets involved in the organ trafficking trade. That is to say, human organs, not Hammond organs. Though if the market was there, I'm sure he'd load a few B3s on the back of his pimped out monster truck. LA is under a giant dome, and it's a place that people, apart from Kurt Russell, are escaping to. The company Chrysalis is led by this guy suffering from ALS.
Same smuggler.
McQueen, I know. I'm having him brought to me.
Normally something to do with computers, but their sideline involves human organs harvested from those lawless areas outside of LA and transplanting them. His name is Jared. I have never thought of the name Jared as a serial killer name. Until now. Jared. One of his employees is video game designer Hannah, apparently Jake's ex-girlfriend. Jake is wanted by the law and captured by his adopted brother, Marshall Will McQueen. Jake and Will's father is killed by Jared's henchmen, and then Jake and an associate build an armoured car based on the shell of an old Mustang. Yeah, you're waiting for the Knight Rider bits. Well, so am I. As this was made in the 90s, VR was seen as the next big thing.
Prism, jacking into medical research.
While she's connected to virtual reality, Jared attacks Hannah, leaving her for dead. But her consciousness lives on inside the virtual reality world in this crystal thingo called Prism. Jake then installs the Prism crystal into his car so that Hannah becomes his in-car computer. After dealing with Jared and his minions in a pretty decent action sequence, Hannah appears to Jake as a hologram and tells him they can be together in the virtual world.
Problem is, cowboy, you've only got 3 minutes max before you flatline.
3 minutes? That'll do.
The end of the film sees them roaming the countryside to fight injustice. Okay, so now it sort of belatedly sounds a teeny weeny bit like the setup for a show that's broadly similar to a series we know and love called Knight Rider, if it's set in a future where Michael and KITT get it on. It's an interesting cast, mostly giving good performances, special effects that were much more ambitious than the previous Knight Rider movie. I mean, we have truck jumps and battles and shootouts, custom cars, and odd virtual reality scenes, people with transplanted organs, and a general vibe of a high-concept science fiction show in the making.
You don't think it's too much, do you? No, Jake.
Unlike the previous movie, Knight Rider 2010 was not backed by a network. Instead, it was produced as part of Universal's push into the first-run syndication market, where they made several movies acting as potential pilots under the action-pack banner.
What if you could place yourself piece by piece into cyberspace?
You're talking about leaving your body and literally getting inside the computer?
Several action-packed movies were spun off into series, like William Shatner's Tech War and Hercules: The Legendary Journeys. But not this movie, which, while entertaining enough, slapping a Knight Rider caption at the start probably did more harm than good. It raised expectations of a link that's almost non-existent, like changing the title of The Notebook to Godzilla and hoping you'll get all those kaiju fans. Knight Rider 2010 is a relatively fun sci-fi made-for-TV movie with a healthy budget, pretty decent production values, pretty decent acting. It just has next to nothing in it that would make you think, Knight Rider.
You're the benchmark.
You want to make me into a computer game?
Genre favourite Brion James was in almost everything as some form of henchman or creep or villain. Heidi Leick, better known as Hudson Leick, later appeared in Hercules and Xena Warrior Princess as Callisto. Executive producer Rob Cohen would kickstart the Fast and the Furious feature film franchise.
You'll pay me $250,000 just for driving?
Just for driving.
$400K.
300. And some clothes that don't smell bad.
If you watched this and thought Mad Max for television, then you're in good company. The Arizona locations do a good job of giving you the feel of a semi-lawless wasteland. Though by the 90s, so many low-budget films and direct-to-video masterpieces had mined the Mad Max vibe that it's really hard to ignore. So, Mad Max and virtual reality dates this movie more effectively than a title card in Roman numerals. Knight Rider creator Glenn A. Larson had no involvement with either movie, and neither of them features the famous theme tune. Both of these films are a fair bit darker in their subject matter than the original Knight Rider series.
I forgot to mention, Hannah's not really dead. She just became my car.
Tell him you're living at my place now.
Of course, it would only be another 3 years before Knight Rider was back on TV, this time in the series Team Knight Rider.
Lab rat! I figured you didn't have everything replaced.
If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, leave a comment below, or check out some of our other videos.
Please, somebody beam me up.
Scotty. Scotty. Scotty.